All right, ready? Skip, set, and go. So it's my intention to try to keep everything moving. If we can get out early, that's, you guys have been doing really well on the schedule. I don't want to get in the way of that. So for you, those of you that do not know who I am, I'm James with Ideal Fence out of NCI. That's me telling you where I'm from, North Central Indiana. I've got a really badass fence company, Ideal Fence, and we're going to go over the Fast 5, or what we call faster than 5, for the iDrive power systems. The concept here is job site efficiencies, production efficiencies. Like, how are we able to get more efficient through installation practices? So brief intro of me is I've got I don't have quite as long as Sean has in the fencing industry. I think he's got me beat by like 10 years, but he was building fence in diapers. I at least started when I was 26 and didn't know what I was going to do. He already had everything well in hand by the time I even thought about trying to start. So I started when I was 26 in the fencing industry. Almost immediately fell in love with the industry once I got started. So when I first got started, I started like a lot of owner operators. I was out in the field a tremendous amount of time, pretty much 95% of the time I was out in the field. Really, the only time I would pull away is if by chance there was a client that was not able to meet after hours for an appointment. I would pull away for a brief period of time to go do the appointment and come back. So I lived in the field for longer than I haven't. I'll put it that way. So in that experience of going through, wanted to learn more about business because I knew how to build fence, and I became really cocky about how well I can build fence, and I wanted to learn more. And I've already had always have had a thirst for knowledge. I always wanted to try new things. Never feared that. And so I was always looking for knowledge. But at the time, that thirst, there was not a lot of places to go to get it. And so we're talking about when cell phones had antennas, right? I mean, that's the time period that I'm talking about. It was a while back ago. And so we fast forward a little bit further, and we go into the 2018. I came across this video where I thought I hit gold. I mean, you could really see the expression on my face when I came across the YouTube video. I was like, there's a fencer that's talking business, and this is what I need to hear. So I listened to that thing like 4 times, and at the end of it, it gave me an introduction of who he was. It's Sean King with Mr. Fence. If I have any additional questions, call. After 4 times of watching the video, I ended up messaging because my QuickBooks at the time was a mess. And lo and behold, 15 minutes after I contacted him, he's messaging me back, sending me, hey, get your P&L over here and let me look at it, and I'll point you in the right direction.
I remember I asked you for a copy of your P&L, and you're like, what?
Yeah, I mean, that's like walking in a room nude. You're naked. You're fully exposed, and this guy's going to figure out that I'm.
I don't even know who you are, but just see a copy of P&L. Like,
right. But on the other side of that, it was nothing like what I thought. I remember that pivotal moment where I sat there and I'm like, should I do this? I mean, how bad do I want the information? And I sent it. I just, like, before I changed my mind, I'm going to send it. And the reaction of it was just not anywhere what I thought it was going to be. It was a cool exchange. Hey, fix this, and this. And then me and him started staying in contact, and he invited me down to Santa Claus, Indiana. He was donating a fence to an autistic child that needed a fence badly. And he pulled together a training event down there, and he asked me to join in. Me, my cocky self, I said, sure, I'll show up, show you how to build a fence. No problem. And I went down there with an open concept, an open mind, right? I wanted to learn. I wanted to see what this is about, but I also wanted to build fence, and I wanted to build fence with another fence company, which is, again, something we don't get an opportunity to do at that time. Now it's commonplace. We do it a lot. We do a lot of field trainings. We do a lot of interaction, but at the time we didn't. And so he let me into his world. And I remember the drive home. I don't think there's, after the excitement of leaving, we just did almost 400 foot of fence in literally 6 hours. What just happened? And we had the excitement and conversation. I'm like, we're gonna implement this, we're gonna do that, and I gotta buy these tools, which, by the way, I still have the same tools. I still use them every day. I don't, but my team does. And it was a long story short, this is where that concept of what I was missing. In order for me to get to the next level in business, I needed to create a process in installation. And that's what Sean had created. That's what I witnessed. That's what I saw. And so I went home, kind of dissected it in a mental fashion. And, a little bit later, he'd sent in some information on vinyl, and it was a list of, hey, these are the key components of vinyl. I dissected that, and that's where the Fast Five kind of was born, because I rearranged that process, and I rewrote it in a way that creates an installation process, and that's what the Fast Five is. So we go into what it is. What is the Fast Five? Who does it? Why do we do it? And how does it work? Now, for those of you that have been here before and gone through this Fast Five, I've got some additional content. I wanted to share that. I think you never want to stop learning, bringing new content in, giving new things to think about. So we go into what it is, and it's a step-by-step installation system and the framework for the crews. And it's a training guide. If you think about it, your process is your training. That's what you want. And it's just basically, it sets the standards of installation. Okay. So Fast Five is organized typically in the most efficient way that I've found is organized as a 3-man team. You can do it as a 2-man team. You can do it as a 1-man show. It's however you want to work it. But if you do it without a process, it's a much slower way of building fence. Create a process, regardless whether it's a 1-man show, a 2-person crew, 3-person, 4-person. For this, I found a 3-man team is the most efficient. On an average install for Ideal Fence, we're able to keep 3 guys busy and productive for 8 to 10 hours a day. So what do those 3-man consist of? We're going to have a foreman, and typically I would call out and say, well, what is a foreman? What's the roles for a foreman? What do they do? What is their primary focus on this? And I think foreman's responsibility, and their number one responsibility, is going to be communication. When we're talking about communication, we are talking about all forms of communication, not just communication with the team. We're talking about communication with the office. If there's something that perhaps is missing once they get out, they need to communicate back to the office, give them an update of what's going on. They need to communicate with the homeowner, right? If the homeowner comes out and has questions, or if the initial walkthrough of getting started needs to be done, that's communication. And then they communicate with their team. Now, if there's a neighbor that comes over to your co-foreman and starts having a chat with them, the foreman needs to interrupt that communication, because production needs to continue. So that's the foreman's role, is communication. I know that's happened to me several times where we have a neighbor that comes and asks questions. Well, we gotta be able to divert that conversation and have a place for that person to have conversation without stopping production. So foreman takes on the role of communication. Second, it's going to be anomalies. Foreman's going to go through and look for the situations that may slow production or even stop production. So we want to try to get those things figured out before we actually get there. If there's utility issues or if the gate placement's off, the foreman needs to solve those so we can keep moving. So the foreman's tasked with anomalies. Then it's going to be moving material. A lot of times when I'm presenting this and may get an eyebrow raised when moving material, but the concept there is a clear visual. And if the foreman is tasked with the movement of material and tracking back and forth between the front and the back of the yard, they're able to see everything that's happening as it's happening. So keeps things on point with the material movement. It's not to say there are times where, perhaps the installer may come in and move some material, but primary focus, foreman moves material from front to back. And then after that's all done, then he gets to build fence. That's the foreman's responsibility. The next person we've got is going to be co-foreman. And the co-foreman, this poor guy, he's in charge of building the fence. I mean, that's really what he's about, that is your pace setter, is building the fence. Your installer, that is going to be the support role, where they're going to support the overall installation. They're going to go where is needed, and they're either going to work ahead or behind the co-foreman or the foreman. They're going to be in a support position. So another thing for when we talk about training, we talk about bringing new people in. I kind of flipped this up a little bit, and I reestablished titles per se, because we may not have a foreman, we may have a lead. Sometimes we call it lead, sometimes we call it something. I call them the communicator role, pace setter, and support. Those are the three titles that I have, and with each one of those titles, the team knows what they're going to be in charge of. So I can really get into a system of training efficiently, because I can switch things up, and somebody can be in a communicator role and switch them to a pace setter role easily, because we won't get our butt hurt over titles. It could be communicator, pace setter, and support. That's the concept there. So we go into, I got some additional notes I want to go over of when we don't follow the process, what happens? Because this is a thing. I've been doing this long enough to know that it's great to put a process in place, but what happens when things fail? And I could tell you that time is going to be affected, quality is going to be affected, and morale is going to be affected. And how do these things affect the process? We take time for an example. There's a cause and effect, and how it affects time. What happens is the crews will bounce around. They won't have clear insights on what needs to happen. Work has to be redone, or have to redo work. We've got to make extra trips out to the truck. We stand around and wait for direction. We've seen that. I'm aware of that. The real consequence to this is the day gets longer. Productivity drops, installs don't finish on time, and then the schedule gets backed up. That's the real consequence to that. We talk about quality. How does quality get affected? There is different installation methods, essentially, because there's not clear communication. The heights may vary, the posts may not be plumb, the rail spacing is inconsistent, the gates drag. So then the callbacks increase, your reputation takes a hit, and rework costs profit, right? So there's an effect, a consequence. How does it affect morale? As everybody gets frustrated and the blame game starts, communication breaks down, tempers start to go up, stress level increases, and the consequence to that is the job feels harder. The turnaround time or turnaround within your team increases, and even good installers get burnt out. So why does this happen? Is because there's no fixed process. Everyone works based on what they think is right. The roles are blurred. The crew's pace is uneven. Decisions then tend to happen all day long. Decisions on the process, if there is no process, happen all day long. And it's exhausting if you have to constantly make a decision all day long. When you are redeciding every step, you lose speed, energy, and quality. So you think about that. And how does the Fast Five fix this? So it identifies clear roles. I think we can all agree to that. Is we're going to set clear goals, clear objectives, and responsibilities per each position. And we think about this in this one way that we can reiterate this to our team. We have a foreman, co-foreman, and installer. They not only have responsibilities, but they have a duty and a responsibility to protect. Now, what are they going to protect? What do they protect? The foreman needs to protect the accuracy and the quality that is being put out. The foreman protects that. And that's on their radar. They know that they need to do that. Co-foreman, they need to protect the pace and the flow of the project. They need to protect that. If they start seeing the flow or the process start getting broke, well, they need to reassess it. The pace setter needs to protect the process. And the installer needs to protect the momentum, keeping things moving. And so they each have that role, and reiterate that to your team. When a role when roles don't overlap, people stop tripping over each other. And that's we see it. Every so often I go out and assess the process and is it being followed. I don't go to the job site. I can watch that from a distance and see what people are doing and to just assess it. So it breaks the installers into different phases. That's what the Fast Five does, where each phase has a clear objective, defined motions and patterns, and has a time standard. This means there's no debating what comes next, no guessing how much should be done, and no confusion over the priorities. Everyone knows. So it reduces decisions. If the process in place, it removes having to make decisions on a constant basis. Do we need to pack out later? Do we need to rail first? When should we start? Where should we start picketing? The answers are always the same when you're creating a process. It prevents the domino effect when you skip over each other. When you skip over steps, it causes chaos. It really does. And that's the pace setter's responsibility, is to protect that. So we move on to the next, and we talk about the bulls. Everybody's heard of the bulls. If they haven't, research them. We'll go over them a little bit here. It's going to be a teachable process. So teachable, we search for a system that is segmented, simplified for training. So it's a teachable process. It's repeatable. It creates a system that is repetitive with a similar outcome each and every time. So it is a repeatable process. Measurable, it creates a system that can be tracked, evaluated, and reported. We talk about measurables. What gets measured improves. What gets measured and reported improves exponentially. We hear Sean say that. So what does that mean? That means it's not enough to measure it. You have to report out the findings in order for it to get an improvement. It's got to be a predictable results and create a process that has the same outcome install after install. So the why, there are some key points that I want to make on the following following the process. Consistency is a competitive advantage. We have to understand that. So if we create a consistent process of installation, it is a competitive advantage for our branding. When every crew installs differently, the training is slower, the quality is unpredictable, the customer experience is inconsistent. So when everything installs the same way, the company becomes a predictable, scalable, reputable. It's a reputation-driven company. And then it becomes really, really hard to compete against. Consistency beats talent when talent lacks consistency. We go on to another element to the why. Why are we doing? Why is it important? Because it's a fixed process. The process isn't for control. It actually is more freedom. When you think about that, it gives you more freedom. It's not a sense of control. It removes confusion. It removes unnecessary decisions. It removes the debate in the field. It frees the crews to focus on their work, not just figuring out again. When you don't have to think about how to install, you can just focus on a faster, cleaner, and better way to install. The process reduction, stress, and conflict. It reduces stress and conflict when we're creating a process. The foreman tells the installer one thing, the co-foreman goes and does another thing, and everybody gets annoyed. So it becomes stressful. With standards, the roles are clear, the responsibilities are clear, and no one argues with how it needs to be done. Structure protects relationships, morale, and momentum. Another element is the reputation makes training faster and cheaper. If your process changes daily, every trainee becomes a one-off project. There's no consistency there. It slows the speed down. So if there is not a consistency within the process, it slows the speed of what happens down dramatically. And we know this by measuring things. But if the system is fixed, new hires become more productive faster. And then there's only one way to learn, not 5 different ways to learn. You just learn this. It's very task oriented. And the building of the fence is one task at a time. And many of those tasks are one person tasks. We don't need 2 guys to do one thing. You ever out on a job and then you hit a rock and then everybody comes running and they're circled around this thing and they're looking at this rock like, how are we going to fix this? That happens, and we want to avoid that. That's the anomaly. That's where foreman comes in. I got this. You guys keep going. Go to the next hole. I'll get this out of the way, and then we can come back. So they learn one way and they don't learn 5 ways. The crew strengths compound over time. So they get stronger and stronger and stronger. We go on to the actual Fast 5. And when we talk about the different phases, the Fast 5, the faster than 5, yes, it's broke down into 5 different phases. First phase is morning loadout, all the way up until the key posts are driven or set, whichever way you're installing. It covers the responsibilities for these roles. So we start with the cover page. It's just a brief overview of the different phases, when the breakaway points happen, and then what's happening within those phases. The next that goes into a little bit more detail when we talk about morning loadout. You know, the responsibilities of a morning loadout is incredibly important. It sets the momentum for the rest of the day. So if we have a chaotic morning loadout procedure, it really does have an effect on the rest of the day. The goal is we want to have our teams loaded out the door within 15-20 minutes of clock in time. And so the way we go about doing that is breaking up the responsibilities so everybody has fixed responsibilities each and every day, the same responsibilities, repetitive. So the trash gets removed from yesterday, that's somebody's job. All materials loaded securely, that's somebody's job. The water is prepared, that's somebody's job. Check tools and equipment, check fuel levels, everybody's clocked in. We check the truck for inventory. That each one of those are somebody's responsibilities. Now we break those responsibilities up. Typically when we're looking at the morning loadout, the foreman is going to get reviewed depending on the scale of your company. They're either going to meet with the project manager to go over the details, or they're going to get familiar with the project that you're getting ready to go on. Maybe there is company cam involved where there's a video that needs to be watched to get familiar with where those key posts are. That all needs to be done in the morning before we leave. So the foreman is well prepared to handle that information and delegate that out once the time comes. And then once the process of preparing the water, securing the trailer, you know, even those are task oriented. So there's assignments. You know, the co-foreman should be securing the load, making sure the load is secure, trailer's loaded. The way we have our system set is we've got 2 sides of the truck. The installer has one side, co-foreman has the other side, and they have checkoff sheets that they go through and make sure that everything that they need for that material is in the truck. We utilize Connect Teams for that. So we build out a form that's within Connect Teams that is conditional formatted. If we go in and click vinyl, well, then all of the vinyl equipment that we need for vinyl installation shows up, and they need to make sure that it's on the truck. And it's a hands, we need to touch it. We can't just make assumptions. We had a 2-foot level in the truck yesterday. It's going to be there again. That's not enough. When we look at placement of tools, you know, assigned spots, organization, it really helps with efficiencies when we're building some things out. So having that in mind, morning loadout, the foreman, when they're on transit, they're not the ones driving the truck because they need to relay the information of what they're learned at the morning loadout during the video. Hey, we've got 4 key posts. We've got 2 on the garage, and then we have 2 on the house. those four, one on the west side, one on the east side, one on the north side, one on the south side. Those need to be worked in, and instructions need to be given. And then once they get to the job site, the foreman grabs the layout materials and starts the layout process while the co-foreman and foreman start the installation of those key posts. There's key breakaway points where there's an overlap, where phase one is still actually happening, but phase two is getting started. And those are going to be considered the breakaway points. Now, again, we have assigned roles where the co-foreman and installer are assigned to putting together the key posts and making sure that that happens. When we go on to phase two, again, we're driving posts, the co-foreman and installer, they work as a team and prepare, and on larger installs, they may rotate out depending on the installation method. I ran the Little Beaver for years. I know that thing can tear you up. It sure can. So the concept there is, you're going to be building out your process. This one is built out for, for wood. And we are talking about a driven iDrive power system wood installation. But we also have another that is built out for vinyl. And then there's an aluminum. So there are processes built, but I want you to start thinking about your process. Like, how can I build out my process? The roles, responsibilities, they may change, but they need to stay consistent. Consistency is what makes things better. So much of the same. We're talking about phase one, putting the key posts in. Phase two, that's when the pack out happens and we're starting to build. Once the posts are driven, again, everything is assignment rolled. Phase three, phase four, this is going to be the closeout when we're going to start to do the rip pickets. Now we've seen this, if you've gone to field trainings with Sean, you see this in action. Maybe not from start to finish, but the concept is there. And that's what you're visually seeing, is the concept of building out that process, the how-tos and training and how this is done, how that's done. But the overall process as a whole, spend some time with your team and help build that out. I think this in its entirety is really was the next phase in my business venture of owning a fence company. It brought me into the concept of getting out of the field and into working on my business and not in my business. It was building the process. So it starts with a production process, but then you build upon that, and then you build another process and another process, and then your company really starts to, you'll see that opportunity for scaling happen. Now, often we see situations where there's a process that is started, but then what happens to it? And I know I've been a witness to this time and time again, and I'm the one that wrote the Fast Five. That doesn't mean that everything goes perfect for me all of the time. There is a constant work and a growth within that work that needs to happen. The key is trying to identify. And if we come up with some identifiers of what are typically the fail points of the process, like why does it happen? If we take the eye off the ball and we don't pay attention to production, and all of a sudden, 3 months later, we show up on a job, the production process in which we created may look completely different than what it actually is happening. And we may not have any clue that happened. And the reason why is it's hard to identify those areas of what gets broke, and then it's a snowball effect. So 5 reasons why the system fails is the one reason is the people start improving instead of following the sequence. They come in that day, they have this really good idea, they're going to try it, and then all of a sudden the process gets broke and it's chaotic. And then they try to improve again, and it just gets further and further away. So someone thinks that they have a faster way today, and they start skipping steps. It shows up as posts aren't driven to really where they should be driven, or the rails don't align up the way they should. You can start seeing some results in the overall concept, and that's one of the fail points of your process. So keep an eye out for that, and be aware of that. The roles, they get blurred sometimes, so you're tripping over each other, and that's when I'm talking about that co-form responsibility, where they have to come in and protect that process. That's what I'm talking about, is when there's situations where roles do get blurred, because we are teammates. You may have the co-foreman come and help the foreman, but it's for a temporary period of time. It's not to do a start to finish, and then now they're hand in hand, and that often happens. So the roles get blurred, and everybody tries to help with each other. The foreman, co-foreman, installer start jumping into each other's tasks, so there's cross contamination that happens when everybody starts jumping in. There's not a clear path. Communication drops and assumptions take over. The crews stop taking and they start assuming. That happens. It shows up in the tools. They start to come missing when there's needed. There's chaos within the truck because the tools weren't put up properly. And, I know we all run into situations where it's at the tail end of the day, and then there's a mad rush to try to get everything cleaned up. And it really hurts the process the next day if we do that, because if we don't have an assigned accountability for a team member on the organization of a truck, it causes chaos, and there should be. So in our process, the co-foreman's responsibility at the end of the day is to make sure the load is secure and put all the tools up. He's the one that's putting the tools where they need to go in the truck. Now, the support, they may bring all the tools out to the truck, but then the co-foreman's putting them in the truck. So now, if something's not in its place, we know who is responsible for that. If we take that one step further, if we leave tools behind on the job, we know who's responsible for that, because the support, the installer, that's who does that walkthrough, make sure everything's picked up. One thing that we've learned, and I don't know if you've ever seen Sean's rig, where you've got the war wagon, you've got the massive fence trucks, but everything has a spot. So it's a visual reference. If there's 5 spots for tape measures and 1 spot's missing, there's another tape measure out there somewhere. Stakes, there's 10 stakes, there's 1 missing. We should have 10 here. And it's an easy way to identify tools, so we don't leave things behind. So one thing I wanted to point out here is we started with a visual tool when we're looking at the presentation side of things, and then we go into a written SOP. So I've learned through my process of going through this that we need to have different elements of learning. We each learn differently. So in order to truly dissect this into your company, you have to have different formats. So some may learn better off that presentation roadmap per se of step by step, who does this, who does that. Others may learn from this written SOP. So it's all written down. And then some may do audio. So there are programs out there to help you create processes and then implement an audio instruction behind those, so they're able to understand it through audio. So what we ended up doing is we have one that covers everybody's role. So it's going through each and every everybody's role within the same document. So it's a lot like the presentation where co-foreman does this, installer does this, but it's all within the same document. And then I ended up breaking that up and making it defined by title. So if it's a communicator, then the communicator has its own specific procedure, process. And so they're able to quickly identify if they get off track, they're able to quickly identify what should I be doing in phase 3. And they're able to just go to phase 3. What are my responsibilities in phase 3? It doesn't go over installer's responsibilities or co-foreman's responsibilities, just foreman responsibilities. And I found it to be easier to manage. So they each get a copy, a laminated copy. It's in the truck, it's in the folder. So there is no reason not to understand it and work towards it. So the thing that I wanted to try to instill, and something that has helped us, is the challenge, the additional challenge to your team, and give them the opportunity to protect. Protect with the foreman protecting the accuracy of the installation, the pace setter, the co-foreman protecting the process itself, and then with the support role protecting the momentum, keeping things moving. And it gives them some ownership within that role. So it does help. So that's me. That's Fast 5. That's the breakdown. I appreciate you guys coming in and spending your time hearing it out.
You killed it, James. You killed it. Nice job, brother.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Love it.
I like the idea of continual learning. That's one of our core values, is we want to continue to learn, and this is part of it. I need to continue to learn how to make things better. It's what you shared years ago. It's not what we can do better than our competitor. It's what can we do better than we're doing right now. And
yeah,
that you've got to concentrate on that.
Yeah, good job.
Yep. The thing I love, and I've had conversations with several fencers across the country, is I love the idea, because this is a shareable, we're sharing information, right? I love it when I'm speaking with another contractor and they've altered it. What happens when they alter it is they put thought into it. And it's like, yeah, I think, if it works for them, then great. And I absolutely love the when I'm hearing that. So what Nico's saying, bring it in and read through it and understand it. If it works for you guys, you want to just go after it, go after it. But I think I challenge to go through it and make it your own. I definitely would encourage rebranding it. You don't want Ideal Fence on there. You got to rebrand it, own it, and have your team own it.
Good shit.
Okay. Okay. Well, I appreciate the opportunity, everybody. See ya.
My man James. Take it home, baby. We're gonna take it home. What do we got left? We're gonna try to do this remotely. You're gonna drive from there. You want me to drive from here? It might be. How do I do that? Yeah, I can probably pull one up. Let me see what I got. I'll pull up a matrix here. Let's see. Okay. All right, let's go slideshow. Where's my slideshow? Right here. Present. Josh Rand's still in the house. He wants this part. Where's my matrix? Where's my matrix at? Window. Here it is.
I'll send you pictures later. It's pretty cool.
You're really, really quiet, Josh. Can't hear you. Try it again, Josh. What'd you say?
Can you hear me now?
Kind of, yeah.
I don't know why the microphone's not loud enough. Maybe it's in here.
It's
Is
working.
Is this?
Yeah, that's a lot better. Yeah.
There we go. That?
There you go. Now I can hear you.
Okay, so I'm building my man cave listening to all this. I don't know. I don't think I could take the camera and no, it won't reach. I'll have to send pictures to you guys later, but it's pretty sweet. I took some old fence boards, kind of got maybe this thing going on in the background, a little old Western. Actually, your bathroom, Sean, downstairs, sort of. You got the whiskey barrel in it. I think you got old wood panels in there.
Yep.
Kind of like that. I'll just text you the pictures.
Sweet.
That'll be better. It's badass. I'm not gonna lie.
Good deal. Can you guys see where it says 2025 Fence Matrix? And if I scroll over, can you see now where it says sales and margins? Man, look at that. Fantastic. All right, so because I am in the Excel sheet, I can see nobody on the Zoom call. So you'll speak up for me, Nico. No, I can't see anybody raising a hand or nothing. I'm just on the Excel sheet. But the same thing, and it's 3 o'clock my time, 4 o'clock your time. The goal is to be done in an hour. Is that right? All right. I can't even see if I'm in the picture or not, but it doesn't matter. Everyone focus on Fence Matrix. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where those results get tallied. This is the scoreboard. This is a estimated projection. I just started playing around with 2026. So I should probably go ahead and change that right now. Boom, boom. That's what we'll look at. This is like what I would like to see you guys do is start playing around with numbers for 2026. And so this has not been vetted out yet, but I will at least give you a once over on that. So zoom out of this real quick. I like to just show the totality of the volume. I know you can't read a single number on that page. That's not what I'm looking for. All I want you to do is see the complexity of this sheet. There is so much data in there for an Excel sheet, a lot of colors, a lot of cells. And believe it or not, the only inputs on this sheet are these blue colored spots. So if it's not blue, it's not an input. It will be a calculated output to give you some idea of what's going on the sheet, right? And so that's just one sheet, and then you got all these other sheets in the background that also correlate to that first sheet. Call it a budget, call it a forecast. We're going to call it the fence matrix. So the things that we're going to determine from the fence matrix is the magic number. So at the end of the day, when this is all filled out, the best you can make your assumptions and your guesses using known data, you're going to have a magic number right here where I've highlighted it, my cursor's at R4 and R5. This worst working model right now, this potential model shows a 0.52, which is COGS, cost of good. We talked about earlier, that's saying the cost of goods to me a 0.52, which means the reciprocal of that, or the gross margin, for this setup right here, potentially would be a 48% gross margin. This cell right here is calculating and telling us that you would be at, you would need to hit a almost $4.2 million revenue in order for all the buckets to be full at the margins or the cost of goods percentage. So again, it's 52.52 is really a COGS of 52%, but we're going to call a magic number at 0.52. You would utilize that number if that was your number to divide by your known cost or your COGS, and you would have a bottom line number that you would want to sell your project for. That's like the bottom, lowest price, maybe you would say. Don't go below that, the rock bottom. So as we look down the sheet, I'm going to show you, well, let's see, we got this total revenue, and then the 4 buckets we talked about earlier. I'm kind of circling that now. Hopefully you see my cursor. At overhead, we have labor and commissions, materials, net profit, and total gross revenue. Total gross revenue has to go 100%. Out of the 100% comes your net profit, materials, labor, and overhead. The 2 cells that are blue here are the 2 that you're able to influence. So if I want to make my overhead percentage be 28%, I'm going to change it from 30 to 28. When I do that, watch the total revenue from 4.186 million. It will change. The moment I change this to 28 and hit enter, now I have to sell 4.4 or almost $4.5 million in order to lower that overhead percentage. I'm going to undo that and kind of show you what happened at the same time. The 100% does not change. Net profit currently is at 18.5, but if I change this to a 28, the net profit rises to 21.3. Okay. The labor and commissions change to 12.7 from a 13.5. And that's because the total revenue changed, but yet the cost of labor did not change. So it's the percentages are going to change. You have influence over that overhead number because, like I said earlier, your overhead drives your machine, drives your business, drives your total cost more than anything, really. So when I change that overhead number, let's see if I can make it to a 20%, which is unrealistic, then the total sales has to go to 6.2 million. No way. It's not going to happen with the resources of the number of crews or labor that we have. So I guess it's good feedback. That's not possible. So small tweaks is what you would do here in this case, a tweak that to get that number where it's manageable. Now, 4.186 million gets broke down below here by the type of fences that you might do, or decks or docks or landscaping or patios or pergolas or gate operators, whatever. You would put those line items in here and you would associate a percentage of the total volume to them. So where my cursor is showing that H42 is 100%. So it's saying that I'm going to do 88% of our work is fence, 5% is decks, docks, and pergolas, and 4% would be retail sales or wholesale sales. I have influence to change anything in blue. So if I say I want my vinyl fence revenue for the year to be 52% of what I do, I change it to 52. And then this down here changed to 103. That's not good. I got to take 2% from somewhere else. So I go up here and say I want to do less chain link, so 10%. Now I'm at 101%. I got to take it down to 9. And so my check is now I'm at 100% and everything is in line. But that updated my revenue per month all the way through. So let me undo those changes there real quick. There we go. And if I slide over, so the percentage of revenue per type of product, what's happening is it's telling us that in the month of January, the total fence volume needs to be 189,000, and the total retail wholesale will be 8,500. And then it gives you more information. That one in red says our sales, our installation for January. Vinyl has been 105,000. Aluminum needs to be 34,000. It's in green. That's why I know that. 23,630 is wood, and $25,000 of our volume of work would need to be chain link. That's really good to know because you would use that for your sales data in December to try to hit the sales goals to manage the production goals that you set forth in January. Total revenue invoiced for the month of January would be estimated at $214,000. And you would just follow that through January, February, March, April, May. All of those numbers are going to change per month because we're a very seasonal business. We want to reflect the seasonality of it. And so up above here are the yearly averages of the input. So this is equating to the last 3 years. For the last 3 years, this company has averaged 5.1% of their total revenue in the month of January, 4% of the total revenue in February, the lowest month of production historically every year. I'm going to zoom down to the bottom of the sheet and show you where that's coming from. That's just a simple input from years past. Everything in blue right here. So we got 2025 all the way back to 2011. But it's only calculating the last 3 previous years. Missing some data right here needs to be inputted. But it's taking monthly gross invoicing for the last 3 years in those in that particular month and getting an average, and then averaging that over the course of 12 months. So that gives you a really good guesstimation or estimation of where your volume of work is going to be in totality for the whole year. This gives you a good goal set. Able to set some good quality goals. The labor piece up here that we're talking about, this 13.5%, according to this matrix, is coming from a known number or a fixed number over here in U6, which is $565,778. You would say, how does it know that? Well, because right on down here in part of the sheet, we have crews, the number of hours estimated they'd worked in a year, the estimated dollar value they'd take home in a year. Okay, you got shop guys, you got commission down in here. All that plays into the totality up here because it's a total working number. So that's a good estimation for the entire year. If everyone works the average hours that we have predicted for them, that's accounting historical data and seasonality. Plus it up. So I can't change and say I want my labor 12%. My labor is what it is. It's this number, the output of cost by this number, the estimated revenue we got to have for the year. So as I change my total revenue, my labor didn't necessarily change. I would change, I have to go back and change it if I need to. So the percentage would reflect the difference between the known cost of labor and the new estimated cost of revenue. Net profit, of course, is what's in this formulation, is what's left over because we can only control overhead and the materials cost. Material cost is an estimation based off historical data. Say, hey, in the years past, we've been at what, 35%, 40%, 45%. This particular case here says this material is estimated at 38%, and that accounts for not just direct costs, but down here in materials bucket, there's some things in the background. You got job supplies, which caps, hardware, glue, screws, all the incidentals. In this case, is counting for 3% of that 38. And then there's 0.1% for equipment rental, damage to property, damage utilities. Those things we got to account for. They may not add up to a whole lot in this case for this matrix, but some people might have a lot of money they spend in rental or property. So they have the ability to add or influence that here and capture it. The goal is to capture as much accurate data as we possibly can so we can create that 30,000 foot roadmap for the entire year so we can build our hot rod to best suit this as profitable as possible. This first matrix right here in the beginning, we've added this piece for total team members, total revenue per team member. In this case, this matrix is spitting out a $261,000 yearly revenue per team member. If there was 16 team members, I can influence that. So if we drop down to 15 team members instead of 16, right now, the way this thing's formulated out, each team member will be carrying $279,000 of output revenue. The total man hours between the entire team worked for the entire year is sitting at 33,000 man hours estimated. And the total revenue per worked man hour totality, that includes office and guys in the field, will be $125 per man hour of revenue generated. It's a good little gauge to tell you in comparison to previous years where you're at, where you're going, where you're trending. Pretty helpful there. This average revenue per product type is very, very important. There's some historical data right there. This needs to be updated with 25 numbers that aren't there yet. But it's showing that historically for vinyl fence, the average ticket item for this matrix was $7,400, and it went to $8,000, and that dropped drastically in 24 to $5,700. And then the estimated average ticket item for vinyl fence for 2026 is $7,184. So big jump back up. And you would say, like, how is that possible? But that's based on the type of products you're selling, the margins you're selling those products at, and the volume or the size of those jobs that we're focusing on selling. So it's got an estimated 286 jobs at that average ticket item. And then in 2024, the matrix shows that they did 264 jobs. So it's a great feedback. Like, can we do 286 if we did 264? The year before that, we did 249. Year before that, 274. So is it realistic to do 286? Well, that's a jump, but not a massive jump. So it's definitely a goal to strive for. And so follow that through all the different types of products that you might have, track them year after year, and you can make intentional decisions on cutting out some of the stuff you're not as good at and then increasing what you are good at volume wise. The center of this sheet right here, this piece right here, it's got a lot of great data. That's where I have the average revenue per month based on seasonality. But right below that, we have total revenue per day, generically per month, per working day. So if that month has, 20 working days in it, then that would take the total revenue divided by 20. In this case, it's showing that we've inputted, that there's an output of 16 working days in the month of January for this company. And those 16 working days at the volume of revenue needs to be completed of 214,000 generically gives you an average output per day, a total revenue of 13,426. And based on the number of crews that you have, it would give you a revenue per crew per day. And in this case, it's showing a low revenue of actually 3356 per crew per day. And then the average revenue per man hour. That generally won't change the revenue per man hour throughout the year for a goal. Number of man hours per day total. That's the number of man hours that's being spent on average during that month of the year total between all the crews. Then the total man hours needed for the month, and the number of projects on average that would need to be done. That's an average number. So 25 projects for the month. Number of leads for that month based on your capture ratio or your conversion rate. So showing it based on this matrix showing, well, for 25 projects a month at the capture ratio that they have on this matrix, we would need 48 leads, and the number of appointments for the month would be 46. The number of appointments on average would be 2. So great matrix. You would use that information to make a decision on, do I need more salespeople or less fence consultants in the month of January? Do I have enough crews to handle the volume of work in the month of January? If you were to carry that number over to number of appointments per day here in the month of May, 5 appointments per day per fence consultant is too many. So I would need to be looking at advising this fence matrix to go with maybe a second or a backup fence consultant in May and possibly even July and June, to where we can get that load down to 3 to 4 a day. 3 to 4 leads a day is what we're looking for. So this gives you a glimpse into where you're taxing your resources and where you're utilizing your resources to make better decisions to build your machine to be as efficient as possible. Not always is it a clean and neat, clear-cut decision either. So sometimes we're really skewing a bunch of numbers and try to get things together. These are the quarterly numbers that correlate with everything to the left. If I come up here and look at production and sales matrix here, with this particular proposed matrix, the previous year in sales, I think it's showing a 3.89 million. It's almost 3.9 million right there in AA5. with 442 projects. The new matrix proposed would be 494 projects. So how are we going to get 50 more projects in the ground? We got to make a decision on that. Well, and then also there's an increase in average sales ticket item of almost $1,200. How is that going to happen? We got to have a plan for that. The average generated per man hour in the field went up $4 a man hour, and the revenue production per day went from 18,269 to 20,000. It's a pretty good jump. We got to decide, is that doable or not? We need to make sure we have a plan that we can absolutely fulfill. Total man hours needed for the year. This is an interesting one. So the total man hours needed according to this matrix, based on the output capacity and the resources available, says, hey, you're going to need a minimum of 17,442 man hours if all numbers are accurate. Last year, you had 16,500, so we did a little bit more man hours than last year, whether it be another guy on staff or team members working more hours. And if they work in overtime, then we have to take consideration that that's 1.5 cost. If you look down here, total man hour capacity scheduled for the year is saying that the current plan that this matrix has with the manpower and the hours worked is with a potential of output of 19,000 man hours, and we'll need 17,442. So we're a little heavy on manpower is what it's telling me. Definitely not shy, which would be something we might tweak or we might not. Might leave it a little fat and leave room for growth or scalability. The average man hour capacity per day is 91, but that, again, is going to be a seasonality number. So if the output capacity is 91 on an average day, if you were to look down here, you're going to see the man hour capacity needed is right here. 56 per day, 43, 67. And then in April, we're now over our average output of 91, which means now we're hitting some overtime with the matrix the way it's laid out. And then in May, a lot of overtime. So getting some seasonal help would help tremendously to get that overtime number, because our output is 91. And this is saying, well, you're going to need 119 per day at this point. 96 is still a little high, 107 is a little high, and 79 for the month of August is below, but then we're back up at 107. So, getting some additional resources from the month of April through September makes sense. And then releasing those resources for October, November, December, and then in January, February, cutting those resources. This is what this information is going to give you if you input everything and follow this. Over here in sales, this is talking about, according to this matrix, if this is the plan you're going to go with, it's a lot of tweaks going to happen in here, but the total number of leads would be 945 leads, and the leads to appointment ratio would be 95%. That sounds ridiculous, probably way out of alignment. So that would put you at 100 total appointments at 897. Well, let's just say I were to change that and say, hey, realistically, 75% of the opportunities we get would turn into a lead. So I would just change it to 75. And what it did is it changed the number of leads needed to 1,200. So now I have a number to go to my advertising team and say, I need 1,200 leads. I need it to match the seasonality of my business. So at 1,200, I need 4% of those in February or 5% of those in January, right? And so you would do the equation and say, how do we get to 114 leads in February, or whatever it is? The appointments to sales ratio, this is at a 55% capture ratio, which is pretty high. But if we were to lower that capture ratio to a 50%, watch what happens. Now the number of leads needed went to 1,300 total leads for the year. Now, 4% of those in February and 5% of those in January, just by changing that appointment to sales. Capture ratio, number of projects did not change, but the cost per lead did change because our advertising budget down below is already set. So the more leads that I have, the more money or the cost per lead is going to change. So if we put that back to 55 like it was, watch the cost per lead there. It's at $97 right here. I take this back to 55 and hit enter. It's $107 per lead cost, according to what we're spending. And that's total output of advertisement, whether it be accountant truck wraps or shirts or Google ads, SEO, websites, media, Facebook, all that stuff. And then the cost, the true cost per appointment, there's two different things. So just receiving a lead is one thing, but if only 75% of those leads turn into actual appointments, then looking at the cost per appointment in this case would be $142. However, the overall advertising, and that sounds high, but overall advertising and branding costs based on the cost estimated below on this matrix is showing a 3% total revenue of the total revenue. That's pretty low, actually. We see that for a growing company, they're going to want to be between 3 and 6%. So that's a very low end of a company that's growing. More of a stable company might be able to get away with 3%. If you're aggressively growing, you might even spend more than that, 6%, which is going to raise all these other costs, right? This is giving you a total appointments per week per day, and these are averages, not really seasonality. So it's saying if every month was the same for the entire year, January, February, we would need 23 leads a week, or 5 leads a day. We would need 17 lead appointments per week, or 4 appointments a day. We would need to sell 9 appointments a week, or 2 per day. And that is not true based on the seasonality. So in the busier months, you're going to have higher numbers, and the lower months, you're going to have lower number. That is just a average over the whole year. So not really super critical information, not really all that accurate, just a gauge. Now down below is going to be your expenses, that overhead costs. You're going to have to look into every single overhead cost, add line items, whatever you're spending money on, but break it down to that cost of that item, total for the year, and then total for the month. So it's January, February, March, April, May, all these months. If you look down below, some of these numbers are the same number per month, like maybe it's a payment on something or a subscription. And then some of the numbers really fluctuate a lot because they are what we call overhead costs. There's fixed overhead and variable overhead. So some of
unknown caller
variable overhead, where the more output of work you do, then the higher that cost is in that expenses in that month. For instance, fuel costs. So the fuel that it takes to run all your sales trucks and your production trucks is going to increase when you do twice the revenue in a month. So some of these costs are associated to relatively to the volume that you do in that month. And it uses these numbers up here, these percentages up here, to give you a good estimation of what that cost is going to be per month based on what your total cost for the year is going to be. Nico, any questions yet? I'm flying through this. Okay, keep on rocking. Then we get down to a monthly overhead percentage. It's very critically important to watch this. So like the cost of doing business, that total cost per month, it's not always the same. So in this case, with this particular matrix, the way it's set up, if this was going to be the play, January would have a $72,000 estimated expense cost, and then February would have a $59,000, and then jump to $100,000. In March to $112,000, $133,000, $132,000, $121,000. So you can see that variable really overhead costs really kick into place. And then this one below it is the daily overhead cost based on the number of working days that you inputted above. So it's a 16-day a month, or a 16-day workday month. So you have January, February, 16 days, March, 20 days, 16 days, 16, 20. We advocate a 4-day work week, and that's why those numbers are that way. So we're trying to hit those goals on that 4-day work week. Some of the busier months, you might need to work 5. If you work a 4-day work week, doesn't mean you're always going to be a 4. But working a 4-day work week helps a lot with holidays and rain days because you've already got that day built in for the week. So it doesn't make a big impact on your schedule. Gross margin is what's left over again from direct costs. So you got your gross margin cost here, or gross margin numbers, which is a dollar number out of the total revenue sold. So like this is saying in January, there will be $104,000 of gross margin utilized to pay the $72,000 and the net, right? Because outside what comes out of gross margin is your overhead cost and then your net. What's left over is going to be your net profit. So 104,000 is a gross margin. If everything hits right, all the buckets are filled and you hit the right margins per job and no anomalies on the overhead cost, those were as predicted, and your material cost was as predicted, then you would have a margin of 104, take out the overhead cost of 72, and you would have a differentiation of, it says $32,000 net profit in that month, or $6,500 gross margin per day, or a $2,000 actual projected profit per day. Key things to pay attention to, because as you have a non-productive day or a rain day, happens often where we don't plan properly and have our team set up, and we're like, well, we'll just do it tomorrow. Once you lose that opportunity day, you'll never ever get it back. So if lack of planning caused you to not be able to go to the job you had planned to go do, and so you use the day kind of prepping and getting ready for the next job, like we'll just do it again tomorrow, you've lost that potential income. You've lost that coverage of the overhead for life. You're never getting it back. And the reality of it is that happens more often than not. So you got to be very protective of your days and make sure that you're capitalizing on every opportunity. Some companies in the United States barely have 200 actual opportunities in a year. On average, we might see 250, depending on where you are in the country. That's taking away weekends and holiday pay and vacation time. The production output is about 250 opportunities. So if you take a 2-day job, turn it into a 1-day job, you just gain an extra opportunity. So kind of massive gain if you can find a way to get output capacity of your crews higher, because this is showing you what a day is costing you, or what you can make per day. So increasing output capacity and the number of actual opportunities is huge. The other thing the sheet does do a good job of is calculating debt service payments, albeit those are not an expense. You cannot, those come out of net profit, but this for cash flow purposes will allow you to put in all of those loan payments and calculate those for you, so you can see cash flow. Down below, we've got, installation revenue, total revenue with wholesale, wholesale revenue alone, and then you can put in what the goal is, what the actual input is. All this data is not inputted yet, so these are all old numbers that would need to be updated. So for the new year, these would all be zeros. As you start to go through 2026, you would zero this out, and then every month you would input what the actual data was. And then I will build a track and give you input on whether you're tracking on this budget or not. Our budget that we did for 2025, I did a check on that in, I think it was October, maybe third week in October, and nearly on $3.5 million or so of revenue. I think we were off estimated forecast by less than a couple $1,000s, which is incredible with all this data. And all the things that can go right and wrong throughout the year, we were within a couple $1,000s of estimated down to the day of total revenue and percentages for our buckets. So the more years you use this, the more accurate it becomes overall, for sure. Now, the newest thing to the matrix over the budget is this last piece here in the corner. This is allowing you to change, adjust, influence, or more accurately indicate what the gross margin needs to be per type of income. So there is definitely a difference between the margin you can make on vinyl fence as opposed to possibly chain link fence. Because for starters, the material alone is a big difference in cost. Labor may not be a big difference in cost, but the material cost is big. That's a big difference. So if the material cost on 200 feet of fence, the labor is the same, let's say, or 20 sections. If the labor is the same, but the cost of goods product went down, it's going to change everything in the computations for the margin or the actual dollar amount of profit, gross margin or profit made. So the way this works is this is showing that if your vinyl fence, let's go over here and say predicted to be 49% of the total revenue. If you hit 49% total revenue, you can make a margin. You can put the margin at 54.4% rather than 48. Because remember, here's the magic number, 0.52. which means the margin is 48%. So it's saying, hey, the margin for vinyl fence needs to be 54%, not 48, based on doing that volume of vinyl fence. So here's 49% is vinyl fence, which is a total of $2 million or a gross margin of $1,116,000. So as you change the total, as that might change throughout the year, your margin might change a little bit. But our starting point margin is that 54.4, and the aluminum will be 53.7, and our wood will be at 44.1. That makes a lot of sense because you can actually make a higher margin on vinyl fence than you can a wood fence because the cost of goods material is higher. There's more money to be made on it. Chain link, it's the cheapest material. There's a 31% margin. Does it mean we don't do any chain link at 48% margin? No. This is showing us we can do chain link at a 31% margin as long as it's only 7.75% of our total margin for the year, dollar-wise, or $157,000. So you can influence all of this stuff in the blue and play with those numbers until the margins become in line with what you feel like you could sell in your area with the value you offer. Like Dan was asking earlier about raising loan prices. What happens if you can't sell jobs? Well, here's where you can kind of squeeze that out and raise your higher profit margin items and maybe lower the lower ticket ones to bridge that gap, to gain that. If it's $157,000 of gross margin here, that means that's probably a $300,000 output in revenue. So we don't want to give up $300,000 in revenue if we can't make a 48% margin. Doesn't mean we don't do it, but the overall goal is to make sure we hit this 0.52 or 48% margin throughout the whole year. This piece in the middle, this cash flow piece, is a very important piece that we just added with the matrix. Because if you were to follow this and script this all out, come up with your best plan for your company, it's all scripted out, and you start following through there, and this is saying, hey, you might make $775,000 profit, but you get closer to the end of the year, there's not $775,000 in the bank. You're like, wait a minute, I did everything right. I got my margin. We hit our revenue. Where did it go? Well, I'll tell you. Down below in this particular matrix, this is showing almost $250,000 went to debt service of the 775. Okay, gone. So the government says, no, you're buying assets with that. That has to come out of profit. That can't come out of your expense account. Can't come out of your COGS. So you got to count it as profit and pay taxes on it. But it comes out of your cash flow. So there goes debt service of $250,000. Then as you start to grow your business, at one point in your business, you may be okay with holding $20,000 of inventory on the ground. But as your revenue goes from maybe $1 million to $2 million, $20,000 of revenue on the ground no longer makes you feel comfortable. It's not enough. So you would need to double your revenue or your inventory on the ground from $20,000 to $40,000. Well, that $20,000 difference between 20 and 40 that you're putting on the ground, 100% of that comes out of your profit. That's what it is. It's your profit. That's your money that you would normally have in the bank is now sitting in post and inventory in your yard. You're going to pay taxes on it. So we got you a spot right here where you can literally estimate the growth. So if your company is growing from 2 million to 3 million in 1 year is what you're hoping to do. If for some reason that's what you're doing, sounds too much growth to me, but if that's what you're doing, and that's what is that? It's a 50% growth. 2 million, you're going to add another million to it. So if you had a 50,000 inventory on the ground before, you would need to add another 25,000. In this case, let's just say we dumped in $50,000 extra. You're accounting for that to go to inventory. Then cash in the bank increase. So as you start to do more revenue, when you were doing $200,000 a month, having $10,000 in the bank felt good. But as you do $2 million a month, a year, $2 million a year instead of 200,000, pretty soon $10,000 a bank, not so good. You're in full panic mode. So $2 million of total output might mean that you need $200,000 in the bank to feel comfortable. So let's say the previous year you feel comfortable at 150,000, but now you're raising your revenue and you feel comfortable with 200,000. You got to add $50,000 here because that money is going to sit in the bank. Increase in cash flow. Okay. The other thing to think about is profit is also all of your AR. So you haven't collected it yet. But if you're on accrual accounting, that money is counted as profit, even though you haven't paid it yet, as they've invoiced it. So if you normally carry $20,000 accounts receivable, and as you grow, that number goes to 50 or 60,000. Then the difference between 20 and 60, 40,000, you would enter 40,000 in there. And so that's showing you that, as you made $775,000 you're going to owe taxes on, you're only going to feel like you have 400,000 in the bank. And there's even more items that will come out of that. This is just give you the 4 biggest buckets, right? So there's depreciation, interest, and things like that. You're also going to take an account against the 700,000, which is going to help you in your favor. But for cash flow purposes, you're not going to see a 1-for-1 of what the profit and loss tells you should be in the bank, or what your matrix or budget has. So this allows you to say, okay, so now I'm showing a $400,000 trash cash. That is the type of money you would start to plan for an investment, or to use to maybe grow your company. Of course, reinvest somewhere else, potentially outside the company. Purchase equipment that maybe you don't really need, but you want to buy a FenceWeek and try it out. If the money's there in the trash cash, use it. That's showing the cash flow there is there. And then maybe you can get a tax incentive for doing that as well. But this allows you a whole year in advance to start planning what money you could have and then what you should do with it, rather than waiting until November, December. Like, oh my God, I made money. What am I going to do with it? I'd rather have a pretty good clue prior. And then throughout the year, this number will change based on your inputs as you month by month or quarter by quarter. I start updating this matrix. And I tell you if you're trending towards the 4.2, you're trending to the 3.8. I'm going to show you where your break-even point is. Oftentimes, that's generally around October, November. But total revenue break-even point. Have a question?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to share our FenceWeek case in point. I owe a person $3,000 and I need to pay a $5,000 deposit on my FenceWeeks. I was instructed to buy the FenceWeeks because it will make me more money faster and I can pay my debtor, right? You
Yep.
know the scenarios.
Yep.
Maybe you want to, like, it's a good investment. I'm going to hold off on paying my debt a little bit, but the FenceWeeks will make me more money.
Yeah. So if you had $5,000 to spend, and you had a $3,000 debt, and the $5,000 could pay off the debt, and now you're short of the FenceWeeks, right? So if you work a relationship with the debtor, I mean, obviously have an open relationship with them and talk to them about it, but if there's a possibility by moving that $5,000 into the down payment or whatever to get you into the FenceWeeks or whatever equipment, trucks, I don't know, whatever it is you moving, if it moves the needle for you for output capacity, then that is going to far benefit you more because you're going to pay that debtor back in a relatively soon period of time, but then you're making more money on money after that FenceWeeks or whatever piece of equipment you're talking about putting in that service. Not to mention, in this particular case, potentially, if you receive that asset prior to the end of the year, then you have put a 25, maybe 30% tax write-off on that item. And if it's in this case, a $65,000 item, if you can get it on the books and you have money and profit to write it off, all this stuff has to be considered. But let's just say you can reap the benefits of a fast depreciation on a $60,000 item at 25%. That's 15 grand, 15, 30. Yeah, that's $15,000 that went to the positive. So by spending the $5,000, getting the machine, and then maybe getting a loan for the balance of the machine, taking the max depreciation, fast depreciation, you gain $15,000 of cash in that month by spending the 5. Now you're paying back the debtor for 3, and you're still positive 12. And now you have a machine that's outputting more work for you. Does that make sense? It's kind of hard to explain. But
Yeah,
these
and
are the
that's
decisions you need to make.
And that's how I understand it. And all I got to do is put my debtor off a little bit because I can get the output to spit out a couple grand extra to make up for the difference. So it's okay.
But
Anyway.
having this information in front of you, I mean, it's a much better conversation with your CPA. Most CPAs or accounting advisors can only give you their best advice based on some very generic, possibly inaccurate data. And so by having something like this, a very measurable, when you show this to a banker or you show this to an accountant, their eyes get like size of dollar bills and they're blown away at this kind of data. Not every piece of data in this sheet is 100% accurate, but total, all of it together with all the ebbs and flows and averages, it's ridiculously accurate as a whole. Okay, maybe not one, maybe this piece will be off over here and this piece off over here, but they kind of counteract themselves. And you can make confident decisions on whether you should buy equipment or not buy equipment, or add a guy, or remove a guy, or add a truck, or spend more money on branding, or spend less money on your overhead. You build your machine, your faster, your hot rod, whatever it is. Maybe give guys more incentive, pay them more money, maybe try to cut vendor costs. Maybe you don't need to worry about cutting vendor costs because really this is showing you that your material costs are not your problem. Maybe your problem is overhead costs. You know, roughly, I find that overhead I've seen between 20 and 35%, right? Roughly. So if your overhead's at 15%, you're probably still working out of your house potentially and don't really have a legit offsite location yet. And if your overhead's at 35%, then you're probably a younger company in some massively growth stage of your journey of growing your business. We can almost look at the overhead and see what the percentage is at and kind of predict what kind of company or what stage your company's in. For instance, if you were to think about the growth of growing from $100,000 revenue per year to 1 million per year to 2 million per year to 5 million per year, as the revenue increases, your resources have to increase with it in order to get the output. So whether it be more guys, more trucks, more equipment, in order to get the output, we have to increase the resources, which oftentimes are a controlled cost, potentially even a fixed cost, as we start to increase revenue. But revenue can increase just one ticket at a time, like, just a little bit more revenue per month. Pretty soon, you hit where your revenue is redlining all of your resources. In other words, your revenue is above the capacity, most efficient capacity of the resources you have, whether it be your trucks and answering your phones or the number of fence consultants or whatever. You have too much revenue and not enough resources. So then you make a decision, I'm going to put another truck on the road, or I'm going to buy a fence Rex, or I'm going to put another van on the road, or I'm going to get another fence consultant, or I'm going to get another location. Whatever it is, when you make the decision to get that next resource, oftentimes we are then become fat on resources. In other words, we have too much resources, and now we got to increase our revenue to match, ideally, the efficiency or the most efficient volume of work for the resources we have. Because if we maximize the resources again, shit starts breaking. It's no different getting your car and driving at 120 miles an hour. Most vehicles will probably go that fast. They don't have a governor on them. But the problem with that is your fuel mileage goes to shit, and the probability of having an accident goes through the roof, or at very least getting pulled over and getting in trouble, right? So that slows you down even more. So driving the car at 120 miles an hour is not a good idea. Same thing in your business. Driving your business at 120 miles an hour, not a good idea. Find out where your business can operate at 65 miles an hour on cruise control and get the revenue to match that. And as you grow your business, you add more resource, you got to get the revenue back up. But avoid revenue out climbing the resources where everyone's wearing too many hats, too many mistakes are happening, things are breaking, we don't have the manpower or equipment to withstand the revenue, so therefore we dump more money into it. So this is where we find the overhead structure. If your overhead's really high, that means you're fat. You got all these resources, you need more revenue. If that revenue is really, really low, or that overhead's really, really low, then generally what we're looking at is a company that has maximum revenue, but now they're wearing too many hats and they're stressed out and they can't get enough jobs done in time, and it just feel like there's just no way this is going to happen, and then it's too scary to make the next jump. But when you have a sheet like this, we can literally plug in a truck, or we can change the revenue and bring it down, or raise the revenue and watch where the dollars are going. This is a massively beneficial tool. You don't have to have the fence matrix. You just need to start putting this data on some sort of Excel sheet and tracking it. Questions? Damn near losing my voice over here. Nothing. Everybody's sleeping. It's too late in the day. What's that? Yeah, I think I'm glad we recorded that one because that was a good explanation, I think. Yeah. No questions. Nothing. Okay. Send it. Good course. I don't even see anything. Who do we have on here? I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing so I can see some faces. Mm-hmm. 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 Ashley, Dunright, Chris, Corey, Ivan, Jason's heard it, Jonathan's heard it, Major Way. Not sure who Matt R is. Sam, there's Aloha, he's working. Kai Abrams. Those are who we got left. What is he showing me? I don't know. Not sure what you're showing me. Jason Smith. Okay. Good deal. I need a drink. I did have one of our students just walk in my office and give me this. He said, I appreciate the week. Woo.
Score.
Score.
I
Good
think
stuff.
everybody needs a drink because we all worked hard this week.
Yeah, I'm not sure who said that, but kudos. Yes, everyone's busted their ass this week. What do you got there? Jack Daniels? I see it. I tell you what, the other locations, I'm so impressed with the output that they put out. I saw the pictures. I got the reviews. I've heard from the people. I talked to the instructors. We literally killed it as a team this past week, and the participants just brought it all home. We're doing exactly what we want to do is help our industry out, be the change we want to see. And that's happening. Look at the content being pushed out. Mm-hmm. Mm-mm-mm. I might be free. Go back on, make some more videos on TikTok. I put a video out this morning and got 150,000 views since we've been online here. So we're climbing. People, yeah. I'm driving to Canada on Thursday, apparently. So was gonna fly business. We're gonna go meet up with Wood Bully and do a fence competition. Yeah, yeah. So, well, I'll be the judge. He's gonna be competing against some other fence guy. Yeah. It's actually a blind judge, so I don't have to watch them build. They build, and then I just show up and judge the two fences, and it is what it is. I don't know which one he built or which one the other guy built. No idea what to expect. Not even sure what type of fence is being built. I was going to fly, but I'm a little concerned right now that flights are going to go to hell in a handbasket. I don't feel like being stuck in Chicago for days on end. So that's why I may be driving. Stop by and see Fence Armor while I'm at it. So, Sam says great info. Thanks for the knowledge. Have a great weekend. Thanks for hooking out. I seen pictures of Sam on job sites. 865, I think it is on the back of a shirt. 865. What is it? 985. 985. Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right. He's down in the warmer climate. Scorching hot climate. So there he is. Look at him. And is he in a skid steer? Yeah, he is. He's working. Get it done. Nice job, brother. Yeah, he's listening. I know. I think he's got their earpods in all over the country. I know all of our guys that were here got one left. Everyone else is driving right now, listening. And their headset. That makes it hard for them to communicate. Major way. Time to jump on a call. Yep. All right. Well, I'm gonna jump off of here. I'm gonna appreciate the extra few minutes to catch my bearing here, talk to the other Sean left here, and then get on the road back to the house. Enjoy the weekend. So I appreciate all of you guys. I appreciate the academy team and all the coaches this week. Thank you so much, and all the participants. You're making my dream come true. So tomorrow, birthday. This is the best birthday week. Drink, eat, sleep, drink, and think about Fence all week. That's a great week. All right. See you guys. Bye.